You don't ever see the top story in the news. Today, nothing happened at 3rd and Elm. They lead with some catastrophic story, a shooting, a huge crash where there are bodies scattered everywhere, because I guess it's what we want to see. It's what we've been conditioned to see. But we need to start giving people hope. Well, hey, it's Dr. Phil. Welcome to Fill in the Blanks. So glad you're here today because I am intending to make you think today. Seriously, I'm going to make you think today, and I'm going to do it because I've been thinking. I've got some questions for you today, and I want you to share your answers with me once you answer these questions. And we're going to get to those in just a few minutes. I'm not going to have a guest today because I want to talk to you. And I want to start out by talking about a few things. And you're going to hear me talking about some of these thought-provoking questions from now through certainly the election in November. I'm not going to be talking politics because I don't know anything about politics, but I'm going to be talking about things that have to do with your life and your culture. The culture that you live in, the world you live in every day. If you don't watch Dr. Phil Primetime, please start. You guys probably know I've started a new network called Merit Street Media. And if you're not watching Merit Street Media, I'm going to just do a shameless plug here and tell you I want you to start. If you don't know where to find it, then go to meritstreetmedia.com. First thing you're going to see when the homepage comes up is Channel Finder. Because if you don't know how to find it, it's going to say, okay, put in your zip code. And you just enter your zip code and hit enter. And it's going to list every way you can watch Merit Street Media wherever you live. It might be on DirecTV or Dish or Samsung or a channel there that you can watch if you don't have any of those things. And there's an app that you can download for free called Merit Plus. You can just go to the App Store, Google Play, Android, whatever kind of phone or computer you have, you can just download it. You just click as soon as you do, and it says, here's what's live, or you can click on Dr. Phil Primetime. So it's really easy. And I'm trying to get the word out because it's going great. And people are starting to spread the word because I'm talking about things other people aren't talking about. And you're looking at the homepage right now if you're watching this. If you're not, I'm just describing it. But you can see there it says start watching. You just click on that, ask you to put in your zip code, and there you go. Because I'm talking about what other people on television aren't talking about. I'm still dealing with guests. I'm still answering questions. I'm still trying to give people, real answers to real questions. Now, here's what I want to do to make you start thinking today. Let's talk about some of the headlines. I just went through a lot of the news sites today, and I just pulled some of these things down. I want to talk about headlines because, and I'm not talking about them for the content, just for context. Just for the kind of values about what's happening in our world today, okay? The point I'm making, I'm going to get to real quick, and I'm looking at what's happening around us. Now, let's go through a few of them. First, war. War is all over the place. We have a lot of unrest in this world, and people are saying we are on the verge of World War III. Now, you can say, well, I look around my world, I don't see anybody fighting. Well, we're in a global economy these days. We're in a global world where things that happen in China, in Taiwan, in Israel, in Ukraine, in Russia impact us here because we are in a global economy, a global world where things that happen there impact things that happen here. So we've got war in Israel. We've got war in Ukraine. We have war threatened between China and Taiwan. So that's one thing that jumps out at us when we look around. It's everywhere. In the UK, they're cracking down on free speech on the internet because they're taking down a lot of hate speech. They're taking down a lot of things that they say kids shouldn't be reading. Obviously, the Olympics just ended, and so there was a lot of talk about the Olympics. A lot of that was positive, I was glad to see, but there were a lot of people complaining about the Olympics, that they weren't fair, that only rich countries could afford to have them. So they were complaining about that. Then there were a bunch of political headlines. They were saying Walz, who is Kamala Harris's pick for VP, stolen valor, saying he lied about being in war and that he was not consistent with the 7 values that he should be consistent with for the Army: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. And then there are headlines about the Trump campaign, that Iran has hacked into the Trump campaign. Then it jumped back over to Harris, that Harris was actually part of a coup, that she didn't get this nomination that she's sure to be awarded at the upcoming convention fairly, that she was part of a coup to oust President Biden. That kind of raises the question that I talk about in my new book, We've Got Issues. I talk about the 10 principles for a healthy society, and number 3 is don't reward bad behavior or support conduct that you don't want more of. What do you want? Now, that sounds like a simple question. You say, I've been listening to you say all of this just for you to ask me what I want. In part, yes. But try to answer that question for a minute. And I'm going to ask you to do something for me. And I don't want you to just do it on a computer. I want you to get an old-fashioned pen, an old-fashioned pad, and I want you to write down what you want. There's an exercise we can go through here that actually leads you to overcoming some of the existential anxiety and some of the resulting depression that you might have. Ask yourself, what do I want? And you need to start out by being specific. Because you just say, well, I want to be happy. No, that's not good enough. My dog wants to be happy. You got to be more specific than that. What do you want? I have to give you maybe an example here. Look at the top 5 hopes in McCrindle's survey. 72% of the young people said they wanted to own their own home. 67% said they wanted financial freedom and independence. Is that what you want? A like number said they wanted to excel in their career. Is that what you want? Do you want a closer relationship with your children? Do you want to get married? Do you want a closer walk with God? Whatever you want, identify that. And then the next question is, what are you willing to do to get it? What do you want? Now, what are you willing to do to get it? And that question, too, may sound overly simple until you really break it down. There's something that I've done a lot in corporate cultures where I've worked with leadership called goals acquisition training. A big part of goals acquisition training is to identify a measurable outcome. What's their goal? And it has to be something measurable. And then you have to identify steps that you're willing to take to get it. So what is it you want? Now, what are you willing to do? We don't have to leap tall buildings in a single bound. What are you willing to do to get what you want? Are you willing to work 2 hours a day towards that? And what does that work look like? Is it reading, studying, spending more time on the job, spending more time in prayer? Is it spending more time with the people that matter in your life? What are you willing to do? Because if you know what you want and you identify what it takes behaviorally, measurably, to get that, then you're beginning to develop a plan. This gets into what you're willing to require of yourself and what you're willing to accept from yourself. You have to decide, are you willing to accept where you are, or are you willing to require more of yourself? Maybe the world doesn't take you as seriously as you wish they did. Maybe your coworkers don't take you as seriously as you wish they did. Maybe you settle too cheap for yourself. I don't know. I'm asking you. You need to decide. Maybe you need to decide, I won't be made small by what other people think of me. I won't be contained in a small picture frame because that's how other people see me. That's how other people view me. I won't let people put me in a 5x7 frame if I won't fit. I'm going to be an 8.5x11 frame. I'm going to be in a 9x16 frame. I'm going to be on a whole wall mural if that's what it takes for me to be everything I know I can be. Are you willing to be confined by how other people see you? Are you willing to be confined by how you see yourself? Or are you willing to say, nope, I'm going to behave my way out of this confining self-perception or other perception? If you could change 3 things in your life right now, today, what would you change? And you may think, oh, I can answer this really quick. That's like the genie popping out of the lantern and saying, you have 3 wishes. What are they? Well, people tend to choke when they get asked that question, particularly if one of the wishes can't be, give me 1,000 more wishes. No, there were 3 things you could change in your life. What would they be? Wise folks have pondered that question. You know, a lot of people say, well, I'd eliminate all disease and suffering in the world. Really? Really? We would have a huge overpopulation problem in this world. Where are you going to put all these people? 90+% of the people that have ever lived are now dead. If they were all still here, where would you put them all? How would you feed them all? What would you do with them? You have to really think about this. If you could change 3 things in your life, what would they be? And have you ever wondered, said I was going to ask you a bunch of questions. I'm making good on that. Have you ever wondered how you got to be who you are right now at this moment in time as you're listening to me talk? How you got to be the person that you are. If your name's Bill, Bob, Karen, or Sue, there's only one of you in the history of the world. Now, somebody might share your name, but there's only one of you. And there will never, ever be another. Think about that. There has only been one of you in the history of the world, and there will never be another. How did you get to be who you are? I can actually help you answer that question if you are interested. Because you see, life doesn't happen just without some consistencies and patterns. I wrote a book a long time ago called Self Matters. I think it's one of the most important things I've ever done. And in that book, I talk about what I call 10-7-5. I think during our life, certainly by the time we get to be adults, that we have experienced 10 defining moments, made 7 critical choices, and encountered 5 pivotal people in our lives. 10-7-5, 10 defining moments. A defining moment is a moment that occurs in your life where you are one way before that moment occurs, and then you are changed in a lasting way after that moment occurs. You're one way before the moment, and then you are altered in an enduring way after that moment happens. Something occurs that changes you in a lasting, enduring way. And we generally experience 10 of these defining moments at some point in our life. It might be trauma. It might be victory. It might be some revelation. It might be an experience. But it changed you in a lasting way. And when you start writing these down, I promise you, you'll have more than 10. And you will do yourself a favor if you edit it down until you get, well, this one it's not as important as this one, so I'm going to cross it off. I'm going to discipline myself down to 10. And then you've got to identify 7 critical choices. Now, moments can just happen. They aren't things you necessarily were an active agent in. You may have just been there when it occurred, but 7 critical choices are things that you were the mover in. You were the agent in. You made the choice. Consciously, actively made the choice. Maybe you graduated high school and you decided to get a job and buy a new car and start making the payments on it with the job you had. Instant gratification. Maybe you decided, no, I'm going to drive a clunker or keep taking the bus and go to school, wait 4 or 5 years before I buy a nice car or live in a nice place. Delayed gratification. It's just different choices. I'm not saying one's better than the other. Sometimes it's better to wait. Sometimes people strike off on an immediate desire and it turns out to be a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Who knows? Maybe that was one of your critical choices. Maybe you chose to get married. Maybe you chose not to get married. But what are the 7 critical choices you made? And in the 5 pivotal people, you'll cheat yourself if you just put your parents on there. Because, of course, they're pretty pivotal in your life. And I'll confess, when I did this, I did put my father on there. He filled 2 roles. He was a very positive, pivotal person and a very negative, pivotal person. Because he was a terrible alcoholic, often violent. He was also the hardest worker I've ever seen in my life. He was a great role model in that regard and a terrible role model in the other. So it was a twofer. So I figured he earned the right to be on the list since he filled 2 roles. So I violated my own rule and let him have one of the spots. But that oftentimes, when you step back and look at it, will tell you how you got to be who you are.